everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, hey, hey. It is another Monday here in September. I can't believe we're in September already. I mean, the time is literally just flying. But here we are again, once again, for another week of live content here with me, your favorite nonprofit strategist, Asiya Nasir, here to share some amazing content for nonprofit organizations that are, looking to do things the right way and with the intention of longevity. So for those of you who tune in each and every week, welcome back. Welcome back. And for those that are new to my channel, new to, the nonprofit sector and, trying to find information and you found me, I want to introduce myself. My name is Asiya Nasir and I am the founder of my consulting firm, Utopian Enterprise Business Solutions, where my personal mission in my company is to help aspiring founders and existing founders fully, truly fulfill their missions in real time. And I am an author of my second book, Nonprofit Doesn't Mean No Profit, where you can find on Amazon, that gives you a plethora of information to help you really dig deep, do some self-reflection about where your organization is or where you want your organization to go, and help you to really dissect the process and being able to help you do it step by step along with your team. So that is who I am. And as I mentioned before, I'm here each and every Monday sharing nonprofit content with organizations, as I mentioned before, to help them fulfill their missions in real time. So this week is no different. So let's get right into what we want to talk about today. And that is keeping your organization clean. Keeping your organization clean, meaning keeping it clean and keeping it free from reproach, keeping it free from, chaos and drama. And that is ensuring that your nonprofit avoids conflicts of interest. Conflict of interest can be a really big thing and can cause your organization to have unnecessary problems. But there's a solution, like everything else. Where there's a problem, there is a solution. So first, let's talk about what quantifies a conflict of interest, right? Because there's different factors, there's different things that can create a conflict of interest within the nonprofit organizations. So let's talk about what that is and then how your nonprofit can free itself from falling into a conflict of interest that can be disastrous for your nonprofit and for the reputation of your nonprofit. So let's talk about conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest for a nonprofit organization has more to do with, let's just say I'll give you an example. That's the better way. Conflicts of interest is where you're making a decision about something where the decision itself is not a bad thing. It's not something that would be of reproach. However, the parties involved, it makes it sticky. It makes it a gray area. And so what I mean by that is, say the organization wants to do something, put on an event or something like that, and you want to hire an event planner. And that event planner is the spouse of one of the board members, or is one of the board members, right? Because sometimes people say, well, I sit on the board, why not hire me? Well, that's a conflict of interest in the sense that they may not be offering the best price for what it is that they're providing the organization. And so it's not fiduciarily responsible that you just pick someone because you know them, right? Because they're a family member. That's giving undue favoritism, because in business, we're always looking to obtain the best for our buck. So a conflict of interest is where now you're choosing someone that you typically may not have chosen, but for the fact that they are a family member, or but for the fact that they are on the board. And it's not serving the organization, it's serving the individuals, right? So that's a conflict of interest, because now like I said, it's a conflict. It's a conflict because now your decision making is tainted because of your knowledge of the person or your relationship with the person. So that happens a lot, because when you do, people hire family members, people hire friends, and so forth. And there, like I said, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with it. How you go about the process, because it is a conflict of interest, could make or break your organization having a good reputation and avoiding problems. So today, what I'm going to talk about is 5 strategies, because I always share 5 strategies. So today I'm going to talk about 5 strategies to help you avoid that type of conflict. How do you deal with that? Because it's not, like I said, just because you know someone doesn't mean they automatically can't be hired or they can't be used within the organization. However, there's a process in which you go about doing that, so that way the organization is above reproach. So that's what we're going to go through today. So conflicts of interest, and that was just one example. So conflicts of interest, anything that would skew your decision making because you know someone, or you're an employee of someone, and you're doing business with a nonprofit organization. Those are all things that fall under a category of conflict of interest. So let's get right into the 5 strategies to help your organization avoid that. So the first thing that you should be doing, and this is something that the IRS actually requires before you can even obtain your 501c3, and that's develop and enforce. See, that's the key. Develop and enforce a clear conflict of interest policy. What quantifies as conflict of interest, and what is your policy in which you deal with it? How do you deal with that? Because as I mentioned before, in and of itself doesn't mean that doing business with the company that you're affiliated with and you're, on both sides or whatever, that could be a conflict, right? Depending on how it's handled. So creating, developing a conflict of interest policy is really, really important, because here now is the guidelines. And the reason why I say the IRS requires this is because part of your bylaws, part of your nonprofit bylaws should include something that talks about how you deal with conflicts of interest. So even the IRS understands that this could really make or break a nonprofit organization. And everything when it comes to nonprofit has to do with your reputation. If you have a good reputation, people want to give, because this is something that, people are going to give only to organizations that they trust. That's the only reason why you would give money. You're not benefiting personally. The donors aren't benefiting personally from giving money. They're doing this because they trust that your organization is going to do what it says, which is this money is going to go towards helping someone. They may not know who, but they know it's going to help someone. So if your decision making becomes something that is questionable, then people are going to question, where is this money going? Where's this money going, right? So your organization has to develop a conflict of interest policy. If this situation was to arise, how do we deal with it? If this situation was to arrive, how do we deal with it? What is the process in order for your organization to stay above reproach? And this is where everyone follows the rules. This is not something that is only for certain people. This is from executive director, founder, to every person on the board, to volunteers, everyone, from top to bottom. Everyone has to understand what this is, has to have a copy of the conflict of interest policy, so everyone knows this is how the organization, and that's what your bylaws are. Your bylaws is the structure of how your organization is going to be run, which is why it's part of your bylaws. So this is why I was saying even the IRS understands the importance of a conflict of interest policy. But the operative word is not just developing a conflict of interest policy, but enforcing it. Enforcing it. Everyone should know that this is not something that's a hit or miss. This is something that whenever there is a gray area, or even the potential or the thought that this could be a gray area, we refer to our conflict of interest policy. We don't make personal decisions depending on who it is. We make concessions. Absolutely not. This is something that we do each and every time a conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest comes up. We refer to the conflict of interest policy. So it first has to be developed, and then second, it has to be enforced at all times. At all times. So that's strategy number one, is acknowledging that, hey, it may come up. These are situations that may come up. How are we going to handle it? Here is the process and the system that we have in place in order to avoid conflict of interest, and the organization having, being tainted, their relationship being tainted. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is part of the board of directors, when they sign on and they say, yep, I'm going to serve for whatever the term is that they're going to serve for. One of the things is they should be signing that policy, that conflict of interest policy, also indicating that that they are required to give full disclosure, not just for themselves, meaning, I think that this is going to be a gray area for me, and let me give full disclosure of why I think this may be a conflict of interest if I'm involved, or this person is involved, right? So it's not just giving full disclosure that you feel that you're going to be part, in something that could create a conflict of interest, but also giving full disclosure that if you become aware of a conflict of interest with maybe another board member or volunteer or anyone within the organization, and how this may backfire later on if full disclosure was not given, it is your responsibility to disclose that full disclosure. And that a lack of disclosure could be grounds for the removal of you as a board of director or decision maker for the organization. There has to be, it's that serious. It's letting them know that this could be grounds for removing this person from the organization altogether because of the potential threat of reproach. So full disclosure, and it should be signed. So that way, God forbid that it came up later on as, well, I didn't know I was supposed to say anything. You did. Because you signed indicating that you would provide full disclosure if you became aware of a conflict of interest and you did not bring it to the attention of the board. So that way it could be handled in the way the conflict of interest policy discloses. So that's strategy number two. Strategy number three, and this one is really, really important in making sure that you have a second pair of eyes looking at your organization. And this is where you establish kind of like a conflict of interest review committee, or an internal audit, so to speak, right? So when you have an internal audit that's happening every year, this is something that you should be implementing in that internal audit, is where they are looking at from the meeting minutes, from the meeting minutes, they're actually seeing how a decision is being made, who the players are, and then reviewing, okay, this was a relative, this was a spouse, this was involving a board member. This could potentially be a conflict of interest. What was the process? What is the process based on your conflict of interest? And was it implemented? Or was this, it's in our conflict of interest policy, but it wasn't enforced. Because the reason why this is important is because at any given point, for any reason, the IRS can come and audit any nonprofit that it chooses to. And if it were to find out that in the audit process that your organization is involved in things that are deemed conflict, is a conflict of interest, people are receiving benefits from this conflict of interest, and it was not something that was addressed within the decision makers of this nonprofit, that could be a problem for the IRS. And that could be a problem of you retaining your 501c3 tax exempt status, which can have a snowball effect of things that would not be good for your nonprofit organization. So it's really, really important. It's really important that you have an internal audit that reviews that to make sure, like, hey, you were doing great here, but in these two instances, or in this instance here, you bypass the conflict of interest policy. You need to review that, go back to that, or don't let it happen again, because if you were to be audited, this could really be a problem for your organization. And then readdress it with your organization, your team, to make sure that everybody is on board, understanding that this is a way that it has to be done, not a hit or miss. So have an internal audit review your organizations just to ensure that your organization is, crossing its T's and dotting its I's, and ensuring that you are staying above and avoiding conflicts of interest by enforcing your conflict of interest policy, and that in every position, every decision that involved your board of directors or relatives of your board of directors or employers of your board of directors in doing business, there was some due diligence that was made, not just because this person sits on the board, it's a given, but there was some due diligence that was made to ensure that there was not a conflict, right? So that's strategy number 3. Strategy number 4, and this one is my absolute favorite because I do it in my organization as well. And this is, so let's just use the example that I used in the onset. Strategy number 4 is recusal of the decision making. So let's go back to that example that I did this in the onset of this. Say we have an event. The nonprofit organization has an event, and you're in need of a caterer. You're in need of a caterer, someone who's going to make the food for the event. And it just so happens that, oh, excuse me, I got something in my eye. So just say that one of the board of directors, their spouse just so happens to be a caterer, and they're a good caterer. They do very well. They have a good reputation, within the community of good food. However, they give you a price and you're like, okay, they give you a price, right? Now there should be some due diligence as to, is this the best for our buck? Because at the end of the day, you as an executive director, you as a board of directors has a fiduciary responsibility to that nonprofit, and to your donors, and to those that are contributing to your nonprofit organization, to those grant funders. It is your fiduciary responsibility to make sure that you are making the most and making the best decisions for your organizations as it relates to funding. So you may have an event planner that says, hey, I'm going to charge, this amount of money for this event to do the catering. And it just so happens to be one of the board of directors. And they're like, I think they should do it. This is a great opportunity for us to, promote my wife or promote my husband or whatever. May not be the best price. So what should be done in that situation is, let's get a proposal from your wife or your husband to see what is the breakdown. What are we going to receive as an organization for this price that you're giving? And then you should get other proposals from other caterers in the community that have a good reputation as well, and get their proposal for what it is and a breakdown of what the organization is going to receive along with that cost. Now, you may have one of the other caterers provide a lot more, maybe for less, maybe a little bit less. Maybe they're providing, something additional for the nonprofit organization that the other person, the wife or the spouse, husband, didn't provide in their proposal, but it's really good. It would be really good for the organization. It's within your budget. You've gotten some recommendations, some, references from this person, and they have raving reviews, right? But they have a better price, and they're providing a team of people, whereas yours, your spouse may only be a one-woman, one-man show. So now you're saying, you know what, this is actually better. This is a better choice for us. Going back to my strategy number 4, which is recusal of decision making. Now, at this point, everyone has a copy of the proposals. Everyone on the board of directors has been able to review the proposals, and now it's time to vote. Well, that person, that individual who has a conflict, meaning that spouse, should not be part of the decision making. They should recuse themselves from decision making to be above reproach in that process. So that way, even if it was deemed that the spouse was the better choice, now you have your meeting minutes that expresses that this particular person, this spouse, was not involved in the decision making. So there was no conflict of interest. We did our due diligence by getting other proposals. We made the decision that did not include the person that was particularly in that would have been a conflict of interest for, and we made a decision. And hey, if it happens to be the spouse of the board of directors, there is no conflict of interest because you did your due diligence and you were fiduciarily responsible in that decision making to make sure that the donor's money that has been given to the organization, there is good decision making behind it. That people are not receiving undue benefit from money that is meant to go towards the fulfillment of the mission, right? So recusing yourself, that should be part of your conflict of interest policy, is that you recuse yourself from the decision making. So it's like, you know what, my decision wasn't even included in whatever the final decision making was, because for me personally, there would have been a conflict. So that is a great strategy to make sure that, and that your meeting minutes include that this person was recused from making the decision. So whatever decision is made as a result of that, there is no conflict of interest because that individual person was not part of the decision making for the organization. So that's strategy number 4, and that's so huge. That's a big one, right? And then last but not least, you have strategy number 5, which is you should have regular training and regular education on this topic. Why is this important? Because your organization, your board of directors, I should say, has terms. When their term is over, you have new people coming on, right? So for one, it's a refresher course for those that are on the board, understanding that we have this in place. It's very important. What are the consequences for not having it? So it's just this constant reminder that we do not, participate in things that would have, conflict of interest or bring reproach, potential reproach to the organization. This is how we avoid it. And then we're teaching the new people coming on board that this is a very important aspect of us running a clean nonprofit organization with a great reputation. Now you're educating the new people that are coming on board. So it's a constant reminder, constant refresher course, constant education, so everyone knows that this is something big. This is something that the organization takes serious. And so full disclosure is something that we're not playing around on that. This is something that we require from our board of directors, and that there are consequences if these conflicts of interest, policies are not followed and not adhered to. So this gives an accountability from top to bottom, everyone on board, to make sure that the organization is doing well. So those are the 5 strategies that I wanted to share with you this morning, as I do each and every week. Something to think about. If you see that your organization, we haven't been doing this, this could potentially be a problem for my nonprofit organization. If we were audited, this could be a problem for us. We have been using people without decision making. I'm not sure if we've been doing the best financially for the organization, and respecting the donors that are trusting us with this money, right? These are things that you want now to revisit. And if needed changes, if changes have to be made, then do it. Implement it and do it immediately. Because, once you know better, what's the saying? You do better, right? So that is what I wanted to share with you today. Keep your organization clean. And these are 5 strategies for you to be able to avoid conflicts of interest within your organization, and making sure that your organization has an impeccable relationship and reputation with the community that it's serving and the donors that are supporting your nonprofit organization. So if you would like to have, as I was mentioning before, strategy number 5 is regular training and regular education. This is one of the things that I do, is I participate in going out, and whether it's virtual or face-to-face, I go and I do training with nonprofit organizations to ensure that everybody's on board and everyone has the same information. And we do it in a fun way, but we do it where everyone walks away understanding the importance of this situation. So if you would like to, utilize Utopian Enterprise Business Solutions services and have me, please contact me. Going through my website at www.utopianenterprisebiz.com and reach out to me, so that way we can set up an appointment for us to discuss personally and customize the training to your organization to avoid conflicts of interest or any other topic that's related to nonprofit. I can definitely assist you with that. And if you know someone who you think would benefit from this information, please feel free to share it with them. So I'm going to encourage you to like this video, comment on this video, just one takeaway from what you took from here that maybe you want to start doing differently within your organization, and share it, because you know the saying, sharing is caring. So make sure each and every one of you have an amazing week. This is another week positive, and implementing one of these things or making the change with your conflict of interest is a great way to make an impact for your organization and for your community. So for everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, and share this video, and enjoy the rest of your week. And stay tuned for next week's content at 9:30 a.m. right here again for content that is going to be beneficial to your nonprofit organization. See you then.